Grayson. I brought you candy cane.
Thank you.
What are you up to, man?
I was just about to start telling them the story of Christmas. Can you help me out?
Yeah, sure. You started off.
All right.
Cool. How about I start it off? Okay.
Yeah.
Grayson's right about all that stuff that I heard him saying as I was coming in. There's a lot of reasons that we can have joy, even when things don't go our way. And I want to show you guys, we want to show you guys, some examples of everyday people who face tough stuff in their lives and what God was able to do in those tough situations.
In fact, we need your help. As we talk about these amazing true stories from the Bible, you'll see some slides on the screen.
Yeah, you think you guys can handle that okay?
Great, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Let's start back way at the beginning. Here's what we need to know. All throughout history, God has made a way to rescue His people, just like us. If we go back to the very beginning of time, what does that tell us?
Absolutely right. God created the world and it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, He did. It was His magnificent paradise. Adam and Eve got to live in the Garden of Eden. But they sinned. They messed up. They didn't listen to God and what He said. They ate the fruit that He told them not to eat. And God spared them, but you guys know what happened to them? Grayson, do you know?
Yeah, I think y'all got it. They had to leave the garden. Even though Adam and Eve sinned, God knew that He had a plan to one day rescue His people. So, where was God? God was right there with him. And as you're about to see, God kept coming through.
Yeah, one day God made a huge promise to a guy named Abraham. God told Abraham to leave all his land and his family and everything and go to a new land that God would show him. Can you guys tell me why the stars are important in this next picture you're going to see? Anybody? Anybody know why the stars are important?
It was because God promised Abraham that he would have more kids than all the stars in the sky.
That's a lot. Abraham had a kid. Then his kids had kids who had kids. And you guys get the picture. Until there were just a whole lot of Israelites.
So where was God? God was right there with His people.
Mm-hmm. They couldn't see Him, but they could see what God was doing. They could see the promises that God had kept. And He just kept on coming through.
There were a lot of Israelites, but things got pretty tough for them.
Mm.
Why? I mean, can anyone tell me why the Israelites were in such a bind? What's happening in this one?
Well, some of you probably know the story. They had to work as slaves in Egypt. God was going to rescue His people from slavery, so He called a guy named Moses.
And then God made all these crazy things happen to the Egyptians so that they would let the Israelites go.
And remember, God promised to set His people free, and He did.
So where was God? God was right there with His people, and He kept coming through.
Ever heard of a guy named David? Yeah? David was a shepherd boy, and God promised that one day he wouldn't be a shepherd anymore. He would be a... Can you fill in the blank? Somebody who wears a crown, sits on a throne. David wasn't going to be just a shepherd anymore. God promised that one day he would be a king. The shepherd boy David would someday be King David. God promised King David that someone in his family would sit on his throne and rule forever.
So where was God? He was right
there
there with David, and He kept coming through.
God kept His promises to His people all along the way.
But did David's kingdom last forever? Nope.
No, the Israelites were taken away from their homeland, the place they'd always lived, by their enemies. Can you imagine how awful it would feel to be forced to go somewhere with people you don't know and you don't even like?
But we aren't at the end of the story yet, are we? Check this out. Before God's people were taken away from their land, God made another really amazing promise, though, through a man named Isaiah.
Yeah, Isaiah was a prophet, which means he would tell people what God wanted to say to them. Listen to Isaiah's words here. This is from the Bible. To us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom,
establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever.
The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this.
The child Isaiah was talking about was Jesus.
Huh.
The one who is going to be king and fulfill God's promise to David was Jesus. Jesus was the promised one, the one who would rescue the people from their sins. Isaiah was talking about Jesus way before Jesus even came to earth on the first Christmas.
Wow. So you might be asking that same question. Where was God? He was with his people all along, and he kept coming through for them over and over again. Remember this, God has always kept his promises to his people.
And that's a big reason you and I can have joy. I can have joy because God keeps his promises.
A lot of you have heard these stories before. These aren't new to you or anything, but have you ever sat down and tried to connect the dots to see how they all fit as God's really big story?
You might be amazed at what you'll find. In any story you read, think about the one question, where's God? And one thing that's for sure is that God has always been with his people, and he has kept his promises all along the way.
That's right.
All right, think about it. All the way back at the beginning, when Adam and Eve had to leave the garden because of sin, God had a plan to make it right.
Yeah, he was with his people all along. He created a great nation, starting with Abraham, and rescuing them from slavery in Egypt. God had a plan to send his son Jesus, the king from David's family, the one Isaiah had promised.
Jesus would be the one to take care of our sin problem once and for all. And that's why we celebrate Christmas. That God loved us so much that he sent us his greatest gift, his son, Jesus.
That's right. God's people had to wait a whole long time for that promise to come true. I know you guys can't wait for Christmas. Would you say 24 days, 15 hours? As you're waiting, remember God's big story and how he has kept his promises to his people from the very beginning.
And that'll help you remember that it's all about Jesus.
He's the real reason we celebrate at Christmas. And he's the one who gives us the true joy.
Remember, I can have joy because God keeps his promises.
Hey Grayson, let's go get some hot chocolate, man.
Dude.
Maybe you can get some of that cleaned off here. That's cool. I'll take that
Candy cane.